probably heard the word Übermensch, maybe from a philosophy class, maybe from some guy online who uses it to justify being an asshole, maybe from a comic book. Here's the thing, almost everyone gets it wrong. Nietzsche wasn't writing a self-help guide for narcissists. He wasn't describing a superhero. He wasn't even describing a person who exists yet. The Übermensch, the Overman, is not a person you admire. It's a direction, a challenge, a question Nietzsche throws at you directly. What are you actually doing with your life? That's what this video is about. Not Nietzsche the mythology, not Nietzsche the meme. Nietzsche the actual thinker, and what his idea of the Overman looks like when you strip away all the drama and apply it to a real human life. Let's start from the beginning. If this kind of thinking interests you, ideas that are uncomfortable, that push back on easy answers, subscribe and hit the bell. This channel is built on exactly that. No fluff, just ideas that actually matter. Part 1. Who was Nietzsche, and why does this idea exist? Friedrich Nietzsche was a 19th century German philosopher. Born 1844, died 1900. He spent most of his productive life in poor health, headaches so severe he could barely read, collapsing vision, stomach problems. He wrote fast and hard, produced an enormous amount of work, and then in 1889, at the age of 44, had a complete mental breakdown in Turin, Italy. He never recovered, spent his last 11 years in silence, cared for by his mother and then his sister. His sister, Elisabeth Förster Nietzsche, is a big part of why his work got distorted. She was a nationalist and an anti-Semite. After he died, she edited his unpublished notes, cherry-picked passages, and arranged them into a book called The Will to Power, a book Nietzsche never wrote and never approved. That version of Nietzsche became hugely influential, and it fed directly into Nazi ideology in the 1930s. Nietzsche himself explicitly rejected anti-Semitism. He mocked German nationalism. He called himself a good European and admired Jewish culture. But the damage was done, and his reputation spent decades recovering from his sister's interference. So, when you hear people associate Nietzsche with fascism or white supremacy, that's the Elisabeth problem, not the Nietzsche problem. Now, why does the concept of the Übermensch exist at all? Because Nietzsche thought European civilization was in a crisis, and he was watching it happen in real time. The crisis was this: God is dead. That's one of the most famous lines in all of philosophy, and people usually take it as Nietzsche being edgy or provocative. But it's neither. It's a diagnosis. What Nietzsche meant was that the entire morale and metaphysical structure of Western civilization was built on Christianity. And over the course of the 19th century, through science, through industrialization, through a general cultural shift, people were abandoning actual religious belief, going to church out of habit, not faith, treating moral rules as social conventions rather than divine commands. But here's the problem. Nietzsche saw that almost no one else was articulating clearly. If you remove God as the foundation of your value system, what are you left with? Nothing. A void. A structure with the foundation gone. And into that void, Nietzsche was watching two very bad things rush in. The first was nihilism, the belief that nothing means anything, that values are arbitrary, that life has no purpose, that the rational response to a godless universe is despair or numbness, or the kind of quiet cynicism you see in people who've given up on caring. The second was what he called the last man, and this is where it gets really interesting. Part 2. The Last Man. The last man is, in some ways, more frightening to Nietzsche than the nihilist, because the nihilist at least takes the problem seriously. The last man doesn't. The last man is comfortable. Nietzsche introduces the last man in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the same book where the Übermensch first appears. Zarathustra descends from his mountain to speak to the people, and he offers them the vision of the Overman. And they don't care. They're happy. They have their pleasures, their little entertainments, their routines. They blink and say, "What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star?" They've traded meaning for comfort, aspiration for safety, risk for mediocrity. And the crowd loves it. They cheer for the last man. They want to be him. Sound familiar? Nietzsche wrote this in the 1880s, before television, before social media, before streaming services, before smartphones. And he somehow described a particular kind of human perfectly. The person who is alive, but not really living, who has desires but no goals, who consumes but never creates, who is content to be entertained, fed, and comfortable until they die. This is not a condemnation of enjoying life, to be clear. Nietzsche loved music, loved art, loved laughter. He wasn't a Puritan. The problem is the absence of direction, the absence of reaching for something that matters. The person who has simply stopped asking the hard questions and replaced them with distraction. That's the last man, and the Übermensch is the response to him. Part 3. What is the Übermensch? The word literally means overman or beyond man. The standard English translation is Superman, but that creates the wrong image immediately because the Übermensch is not about power over others. It's about power over yourself. Here's the core of the idea. The Übermensch is someone who creates their own values, not someone who inherits values from religion or culture or family or peer pressure and then follows them because that's what you do. Not someone who acts morally because they're afraid of hell or afraid of judgment. Not someone who has goals because society told them those goals were worth having. Someone who genuinely asks, what do I actually think is worth doing? What do I actually believe is good? What am I going to commit to, knowing that no external authority is going to back me up? This is much harder than it sounds. Most people never do it. Most people live inside a set of values they didn't choose and barely examine. Work hard, get married, buy a house, be polite, don't embarrass the family, achieve the things that look like achievement. None of that is wrong, necessarily. But have you actually chosen it? Have you looked at it honestly? Or did you just absorb it the way you absorb language? The Übermensch has done the work of examining, and then the harder work of creating. Nietzsche uses the word will to power to describe the drive behind this, and here is where he gets badly misread again. The will to power is not the desire to dominate other people. It's not conquest. It's not control. Nietzsche is actually pretty clear that the will to power is about self-overcoming, the drive to grow, the drive to not be what you were yesterday, the drive to push against your own limitations, your own weaknesses, your own comfort. It's creative, not destructive. Part 4. The Three Metamorphoses. One of the most useful passages in all of Nietzsche is the parable of the three metamorphoses, also from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He describes three transformations of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel. The camel is the spirit that says, "Load me." It kneels down and asks for burdens. It wants to carry what is hardest, the weight of duty, of tradition, of obligation. The camel is the person who works hard within the given system, who follows the rules, who respects authority, meets expectations, does what is required. There's nothing contemptible about the camel. It has strength. It endures. But it is not free. It carries the values of others on its back, and it goes into the desert. The lion. And in the desert, a transformation happens. The camel becomes a lion. The lion does not say, "I will," it says, "I will not." It fights the great dragon whose name is "Thou shalt." It refuses. It roars at the inherited commandments, the imposed values, the systems that were handed down and never questioned. The lion is the rebel, the skeptic, the person who says, "I'm not going to just accept this. I'm going to challenge it." The lion can't create new values. It can only destroy old ones. But that destruction is necessary. You can't build something new on a foundation that belongs to someone else. You have to clear the ground first. The child. And the final transformation, the hardest one, is the child. The child is not childish. The child is the spirit of pure creation. The child doesn't fight against the old values, because for the child, there are no old values to fight. The child plays. The child creates. The child approaches life as a game it invented for itself. This is the spirit of the Übermensch, not the strength of the lion or the endurance of the camel, though both were necessary steps. The innocence and creative energy of the child who says, "This is what I think matters, and I'm going to pursue it fully." Part 5. Amor, fati. There's a phrase Nietzsche returns to again and again that is essential to understanding the Übermensch. Amor, fati. Love of fate. Not acceptance of fate. Not resignation to fate. Love. The idea is this. Everything that has happened to you, the good things, the bad things, the painful things, the embarrassing things, the losses, the failures, the moments you'd rather forget, all of it is part of what made you what you are. And not just in a self-help, everything happens for a reason way. Nietzsche doesn't believe everything happens for a reason. He means something harder than that. He means even if your suffering was pointless, even if your losses were senseless, even if there was no reason and no lesson, can you still say yes to it? Can you not just accept it, but actually want it to have been exactly as it was? This connects to one of his most famous thought experiments, the eternal recurrence. Imagine that you will live your life exactly as you have lived it an infinite number of times. Every choice you made, you will make again. Every good moment and every terrible moment, endlessly repeated, forever. Is that thought paralyzing? Is it unbearable? Or is it something you could affirm? Could you live in such a way that when you imagine that thought, you feel not dread, but a kind of fierce joy? Nietzsche isn't saying recurrence is literally true. He's using it as a test, a filter, for your values, for your choices, for the way you're living. If you imagine eternal recurrence and feel horror, that's information. That means you're living in a way you don't actually endorse, that the values you're pursuing aren't really yours, or that you're wasting time, or that you're in a life you don't believe in. The Übermensch is someone who could say yes to eternal recurrence. Not perfectly. No human being gets there. But as a direction. Part 6. What this looks like in real life. Enough abstraction. What does this look like when a real person actually tries to live it? It doesn't look like wearing all black and quoting Nietzsche at parties. It doesn't look like rejecting all social norms or treating other people's values as beneath you. That's just aesthetic rebellion, and Nietzsche would find it embarrassing. It looks like something quieter and harder, examining your values instead of inheriting them. This means genuinely asking, why do I want what I want? not in a paralyzed, overthinking way, in an honest way. Is this career actually something I care about, or did I choose it because it was the thing to do? Is this relationship one I'm in freely, or one I'm in out of fear? Are these beliefs ones I've actually considered, or ones I absorbed without noticing? Most people never ask these questions seriously. They're uncomfortable. They might destabilize things. But if you never ask them, you are the camel, carrying burdens you never chose, creating something, not necessarily art, not necessarily something that other people see or recognize, but the act of bringing something into existence that wouldn't exist without you, a project, a business, a body of work, a way of raising your children, a community, a practice. This is fundamental to what Nietzsche means by value creation. The person who only consumes, who only reacts, who only follows what already exists, that person is not yet the Overman, not even close, self-overcoming. This is the one that's most concrete. Nietzsche talks about this constantly. The will to power is not power over others. It's the daily practice of becoming better than you were, not in a competitive, status-driven way, in a genuine way. What weakness in you do you keep tolerating? What capacity in you have you left undeveloped? What do you know you're capable of that you haven't yet demanded of yourself? The Uberman isn't perfect. He's in the direction of perfection, always moving, never settling, affirmation, not resentment. One of the things Nietzsche hated most, and he really did have strong aesthetic reactions to things, was what he called resentment. The psychology of the person who defines themselves by what they're against, who can't celebrate their own life, so they tear down others, who builds their identity out of grievances. This is the opposite of the Overman. The Overman says yes to life, even to its difficulty, even to its unfairness. Not with naive optimism, Nietzsche was not optimistic, but with a kind of rooted, fierce affirmation. This is my life. These are my values. I am going forward. Part 7. The misreadings and why they matter. It's worth spending a few minutes on how this idea has been misused, because the misreadings are almost as interesting as the original. The Nazi misreading. We talked about this. Elizabeth. The selected quotes. The will to power as national domination. It's false. It's documented. And Nietzsche himself wrote with contempt about German nationalism and anti-Semitism in letters and in published work. If you've heard Nietzsche associated with fascism, that association was manufactured after his death. The Übermensch is about self-overcoming, which is the opposite of defining yourself by race or nation. The "I'm better than everyone" misreading. This is the internet version. The guy who discovers Nietzsche at 19 decides he's an Übermensch and uses it to justify treating other people badly or dismissing anyone who disagrees with him as a slave morality pleb. Nietzsche would have found this person more contemptible than the last man. The Overman is not about social hierarchy. It's not a license for arrogance. The person who uses the concept to feel superior to others has completely missed the point, which is internal, which is demanding, which is about how hard you push yourself, not about how low you think others are. The individualist isolation, misreading. Some people take the Übermensch to mean radical self-sufficiency, the lone wolf, the person above needing others. This also misses the mark. Nietzsche valued deep friendship, genuine connection, honest relationships. What he opposed was herd mentality, following the crowd not because you agree with it, but because it's the path of least resistance. You can have a community, a family, deep relationships, and still be the person who examines their own values rather than inheriting them. Part 8. Nietzsche's real target. Here's something that often gets missed. The Übermensch is not primarily a critique of weak or ordinary people. It's a critique of a civilization. Nietzsche thought that the entire moral framework of the West, Christian morality, and its secular descendants like utilitarianism, socialism, nationalism, all of it, was fundamentally built on what he called slave morality. Here's what he meant. He looked at the history of moral systems and saw two basic types. The first was what he called master morality, a value system built around what is strong, noble, creative, affirmative. Good and bad in this system are defined from a position of strength. What enhances life is good. What diminishes it is bad. The second was slave morality, a value system built from a position of weakness and resentment. In slave morality, what is powerful is evil, and what is weak, humble, and suffering is good. What matters is not strength, but meekness, not creation, but endurance. Nietzsche argued that Christianity was the ultimate expression of slave morality, and that the Enlightenment and modern secular values had simply replaced Christian framing with secular framing, but kept the same basic structure: pity the weak, distrust the strong, make suffering into a virtue. He didn't hate Christianity for being false. He challenged it for what he saw as its life-denying character, the way it made endurance, self-abnegation, and suffering into ideals, and looked with suspicion on joy, power, and creation. Now, you can disagree with this entirely. Many people do. You can argue that compassion and care for the weak are genuinely good, not just cope. You can argue that humility is a real virtue, not just the rationalization of people who couldn't be powerful. But the critique is worth sitting with, because even if Nietzsche goes too far, the underlying question is real. Are your values actually yours? Or are you performing a kind of morality that was designed by people long dead to keep you small? Part 9. Nietzsche and you. Let me close with the most uncomfortable part of this. Nietzsche isn't describing someone else. He's describing the standard against which you should measure yourself. The question the Übermensch asks is not, are you successful? Success is defined by other people's values. It's not, are you happy? Happiness, in Nietzsche's framework, is too passive. It's the last man's goal. The question is, are you becoming? Are you moving in a direction that you actually chose, toward values that you actually examined, through difficulty that you actually face rather than avoid? Are you the camel, carrying burdens someone else assigned to you? Are you the lion, rebelling but not yet creating? Or are you the child, playing your own game with your own rules, fully? Nietzsche doesn't tell you what to create. He doesn't tell you what values to have. That's literally the point. The content of the Übermensch's life is up to the Übermensch, but the form is clear: honesty with yourself, courage to create, willingness to grow, refusal to settle into the comfortable numbness of the last man. That's the Übermensch, not a superhero, not a tyrant, not an arrogant asshole, just a human being who decided to actually live. Nietzsche died young, mentally broken, misunderstood in his own time, and weaponized after his death. He never saw the influence his ideas would have, but the ideas survived, and the ones we talked about today: create your own values, overcome yourself, love your fate, say yes to life. These aren't just philosophy. They're a way of approaching a Tuesday morning when everything feels pointless and you can't remember why you started. They're a way of looking at yourself honestly and asking, am I the camel? Am I the lion? Or am I finally ready to become the child? That's a question worth carrying with you. Thanks for watching.